welcome you to today's show. I have an amazing group of men here in my living room, no doubt. We are less than 24 hours after the verdict where George Zimmerman was not convicted from the murder of Trayvon Martin. And in the spirit of what I saw on the internet, in the spirit of what I saw on Facebook, and in the spirit of what I got on text messages through my cell phone, I thought it would be robbery of black men to not have their voices heard. This is too big of an issue to be ignored and to be dismissed. I've had countless conversations. My cell phone even froze like 3 times just from so many text messages coming in from people expressing to me, Saida, what can we do? What can we say? And so take today's show as a snippet of what's to come. I am not going to rest until the black men's voices are heard, and I'm not going to rest until the black community feels that justice has been served in a nonviolent way. So today I have an amazing group of men with me. I'm going to start today's conversation with Hakeem Green, who's a friend of mine from the group Channel Live, and we're going to go around and, we're just going to have this conversation. I have to ask, how did you feel when you heard not guilty? Like, what did you feel when you heard not guilty?
It was a long day for me yesterday. Got in the house, I fixed the plate. I was just about to start eating. A friend of mine hit me on the phone. He was like, yo, God, not guilty. Yo, did you hear it? Everybody on Facebook is saying not guilty. What you know about that? Normally, I'd probably turn the TV on or go to Facebook or what have you. I said, you know what, I gotta eat first. I gotta get something in my stomach so I can stomach it. And it took me a second to actually focus, on what was going on. And when I did, it was like, okay, this is not just a rumor, it's real, not guilty. It's like, okay, what do we expect? I went to sleep.
Really?
I went to sleep because...
Really? Because the verdict came in, I will say, the verdict came in very late. It came in, what was it, 10 o'clock last night? It came in very late.
Yeah, it's just, I just didn't have, my mind wasn't in a place where I could really process it and express the emotion and the disappointment and the expectation, and it's just too much of that. And then at the same time, I kind of have committed myself a long time ago to these types of issues. So it's just one more story in a long list of, whether it's Philip Pinnell from Teaneck, New Jersey, all the way up. We don't have to go through the litany of names, although we should honor everybody who's fallen victim to police brutality or some other type of mishap like this. But it's just another. What are we going to do as a community? I'm kind of more focused on that. I'm with building sustainable programming where we can affect changes in people's lives that are measured 5, 10, 15 years down the line. I don't really expect anything much to happen immediately in the wake of Trayvon Martin. I don't think it works like that. I think there are a bunch of committed folks around the country who have been committed for a long time. This is not any spark to them to get them committed.
Right.
And it's just finding new blood, new voices, new minds, and connecting, organizing, and building some strategic partnerships to really affect change in our children's lives in a real way. So that's really where I'm at with it. The Trayvon thing for me, although I'm so hurt that his family has to go through this tragedy, for other folks, if it's that wake-up call that gets them inspired, like, for us, back it was Michael Griffin, it was Larry Davis, it was Tawana Brawley, it was like that got us, and you had the soundtrack with Chuck and KRS One, and you're like, okay, we had purpose for our culture other than the nonsense. So it's like, hopefully this situation will create purpose in people's lives for them to get activated and focus on something real.
Well, I mean, we're going to be here for a while, and I have a point to make to that, because I have 2 teenagers, and I don't know about that. I mean, I even had a conversation in the grocery store with a woman today, and we talked about why are young people, this whole Lil Wayne generation, not outraged. So we're going to talk about that, but I want to get everybody's immediate sentiment on how they felt when they heard the verdict, and then we're going to get right into a bigger discussion. I've got Divine joining me. He is the CEO of antiindustry.com. Divine, how did you feel when you heard not guilty?
Well, it was kind of expected. We were basically just waiting for the whole thing to come in, and I pretty much was braced for it because everybody pretty much told me that, watching the trial, I couldn't even watch it because I get angry just watching that day to day, but I did watch the closing arguments, and then I thought, maybe he does have a chance to get justice or something like that, but, it was expected deep down because you see it happen all the time. He had his father who was a Supreme Judge and things like that.
Hold that thought. We're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
We're gonna touch on that.
Yeah, it was kind of expected. I expected it down the pipeline, but it still hit me hard because deep down you don't want it, but you expect it in the back of your mind because you see.
It took 6 weeks just to charge him, so that kind of set the tone of what was to come anyway, so we're definitely going to talk about that. I want to swing over to my friend Lorenzo, who is an entrepreneur and motivational speaker. How did you feel when you heard not guilty?
I hate to admit it, but I was numb because I expected it.
Oh God, is this going to be the...
I feel like everything just took too long. It took a long time for him to get charged, and my expectations of the legal system and the way things work in this country, I didn't expect him to get charged. I didn't expect him to do any time for it. And the way I look at it, not too much time has passed since we weren't even allowed to use the same toilet or the same water fountain as white people. I have a grandmother who just turned 85, and she actually lived through the times, and that's not that long ago. So the way I look at it, we still have a very, very long ways to go. Yeah, we're not, in slavery anymore. They can't tell us what to do, but it's still a lot of mental enslavement going on. And so I didn't expect it. Still a lot of racism. It's very covert. It's hidden. It's more, manipulative and crafty. And so.
But it's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah, we're going to really touch on that too, because I heard many times that race wasn't an issue in this case, which we all know is complete BS. So now I want to bring in my friend Chris. Chris is a father of a 17-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. A friend of mine, Chris, asking you the same question. How did you feel when you heard not guilty? Like George Zimmerman, not guilty of all charges.
When I was actually picking up food for dinner, when I was in the restaurant, the TV came on at 10:01, not guilty. And honestly, I felt rage. I was upset, very upset, because all evidence was there in black and white. We've got everything from the police telling them, we don't need you to pursue him.
Oof.
We've got everything from it being premeditated by him carrying a gun outside the house. He didn't go back to the house to get a gun. He came out with a purpose. So with all of that being there in black and white, I just don't see how he could not be guilty. But it says a lot. I mean, it says a lot from where we think we've came from to where we are now. I believe that a lot of stuff is camouflaged. Yeah, we have a black president,
That's what you were saying.
but it's very camouflaged. The same things that was going on during Jim Crow times is going on now, but it's just like he just said, it's more on a mental level than it is of a physical. And I just seeing everything that was going on, and hearing the not guilty, it really, I had to go in the house. I couldn't even eat.
I have to say something really quick. A friend of mine, Browne, who's in Atlanta, who just a friend to the show, actually he is the associate producer of the new TV show, sent me a text message. He and his wife were out last night. I've known Browne for at least 10 years. Sent me curses in capital letters with exclamation points. I had to show my husband. I'm like, look what D just sent me. The first text message said that he and his wife were out, and he was so disgusted he couldn't even enjoy himself, and he went back home. And on the way home, he was sending me these text messages with curses and exclamation points. And he was like, and they have two sons, he has two sons as well. And he was like, I just can't believe it. So I think rage, that internal rage, you are not alone in feeling that. Like, so many people felt the same way, like the most calm people. So, but I want to touch on, and we all have points that I want to bring up, on the fact that he left the house with the gun. But before we get to that point, I want to finish going around introducing everybody and just finding out what they felt, how they felt when they heard not guilty. I want to bring into the conversation my friend Craig Howard, who is the author, awesome book of the Plumster Bunny series for kids. Great, great book, by the way. Craig, how did you have two sons just like I have two sons. How did you feel? I mean, real simple question, very complex answer, when you heard not guilty.
Well, I can personally tell you that I expected this after he wasn't immediately charged,
Yeah.
but what it said to me immediately was that I had more work to do as a man of color, as a father, to make sure that my sons don't have to go through something like this. I've got to step my game up again to let George Zimmerman and people like George who have that type of thinking understand that I'm not to be hunted, I do the hunting. Okay, that's number one.
Yeah,
Number
that's
two,
clap-worthy right there.
we have an opportunity as men of color to galvanize together for men who are peaceful, for men who understand what this really said, and we've got a leader who actually has joined the fray. We need to support him. We need to make sure that he's not standing on the island by himself, and when we go after George this time, let him understand what it's like to be the Martin parents. Okay, when George is sitting behind bars in solitary, wherever he goes, I don't care where he goes, it makes no difference. But I can tell you right now, the man does not deserve freedom. He knows he doesn't deserve freedom. He knows his actions were premeditated. And personally speaking, I'd just like to know one thing. Where does it say in the United States that when you're given instruction by the authority, you can either listen or not? I don't know, we can talk about this law.
Well, the rules are different. You know the rules, we don't play by the same rules.
I understand that. I'm just saying to you that maybe I'm driving down, I'm doing 65 and 25 mile an hour zone, and a police officer says stop, and I say, hey, well, I'm a little busy right now, I'm late for the Yankee game, I don't know, and I'm just gonna keep on going. I don't want to be stopped. I mean, this is what this guy said inherently. So
Through his actions.
Through his actions.
Well, we're going to talk about some of the specifics of the case because there are holes like all the way around the board. And I mean, we can talk probably until 2014, but there are some key points that Chris brought up. I mean, that all the men have brought up here. But that was one of my biggest issues right there, that they said stop, he kept going, and then yet self-defense. But anyway, hold that thought. We're going to move on. We have our next guest, Trayvon, who is a healer. I'm so happy that you're with me because you bring such a different energy to the group. How did you feel when you heard not guilty?
I felt a complete wave of utter disappointment in humanity. Last year, I made a piece about Trayvon after it happened, and I wrote a poetry piece crying because I imagined the perspective of his family and what they must feel and what they're going through. And I didn't think I would have to share that work, that poem, that video again. And it was very, very sad to have to share that again and to have to go through it again.
Well, I want to bring in now our last guest today, Tarzan the Skilled, who I just absolutely adore. MMA beast. MMA beast. How did you feel? Like, we're laughing and, my heart smiles all the time. But over this very serious issue, how did you feel when you heard not guilty?
Well, to adjust the fact of why I'm smiling is just because intelligent black brothers, are together. You can't help but smile, like even in my family, you really. But when I wasn't even following the case, to be honest with you, my grandfather had just recently passed 2 days ago, and I have a tournament coming up this Saturday, and I don't want to sound unsinful or psychotic or sociopath, but I'm so focused on winning, you know, and I'm training really hard, you know, to get a fight. When my brother actually texted me and told me what was going on in Florida, you know, and I had to go to Facebook. And I'm not a type of man to post about what I think personally on Facebook, because that gives people energy to see me in person and judge what I say. So I was not discouraged at what happened, but like everyone else said, it's pretty, yeah, you kind of seen it coming. You knew what was coming. But for me, it's the same satisfaction as my family, my grandfather. I related to both. And it's because who are we not to care at the last moment when we should have cared before?
That's right.
Oh, okay. Keep talking. I'm sorry.
And
Keep talking.
when my family and friends were texting me, because I'm a revolutionary in mind and I'm always against fight power, everyone's hitting me up like, Tarzan, you know, what are your views? What are your views? I told them, you know what, honestly, right now, my views would have been the same 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Even if I was born, my grandfather would have the same views. If you people don't start opening up to understand that it's just not one incident, that right now as you're Facebooking yourself and your friends, it's happening again. And this time, it's not being heard.
Right.
So I'm not going to be on the bandwagon and jump on and put my picture to black out to show everyone how I feel. Because if you want to know how I feel, you'll know me to get off the Facebook and come talk to me socially. You know, that's what we need to send a message. You know, there's a big problem right now besides the fact, you know, I really feel his family, you know. But I left my family just because of that simple reason. You want to do things when it's too late, when you should do things throughout the whole life.
Well, I'm going to touch on that because I said, and I don't know how this is going to be received in a room full of black men, but one of the things that I said was, where are all these fraternities and Greek organizations and 100 black men of this and 100 black men of Atlanta, and like, I didn't want to place the blame of Trayvon Martin's death on the shoulders of black men, but at some point, and as from a woman, at some point, how do we have all of these groups of black men that are not reaching back to the younger black men? And I remember, and I'm going to say it, and this is being recorded, I remember my father told me one time that he saw my son on a corner. And I looked at him and I was like, well, Daddy, why didn't you tell him to get off? And it's not an indictment on my dad per se, but he felt, okay, I'm going to let but you're his grandfather. You see him standing on the corner, you say, get your ass off the corner and get up the street. Like something happened. I don't know what happened. Tell me.
We were defeated.
How?
Money. We sold out. 70s was something else. 70s and 80s, man, Reagan era politics.
Oh yeah.
You know, greed is good. You know, all that good stuff. You know, it's just an illusion was created that we could gain access, social acceptance in America if we played by certain rules, and those folks that couldn't play by those rules went outside the rules to play the same game, to get that money so they could have access, because the illusion of access as the equalizer.
But isn't that what Jay-Z does? Isn't that what he's trying to do, just bring access? Or isn't that what, not even just him per se, but pop culture, isn't that what they're selling?
I was having a conversation with Dr. Margaret Stevens about, we were discussing Dr. Boyd Watkins' piece that he did on HBCUs are in financial trouble.
Yes.
Right. So so she said, well, how come he doesn't frame it in terms of class? Like, why do we never talk about the class dynamic and in relationship to power? And then I think he does a great job. You're a black
I
girl.
do too.
He does a great job.
I like him.
But he has 200,000 hits every single day.
I like him.
Right,
And
and he has branding, he has sponsorship opportunities, and certain things that you just can't say, or you lose that check. And cats like, do I really stand up for what is right? I gotta feed my family, I gotta pay that mortgage, I gotta keep that car note going. I don't really want to lose everything.
Like, I want to walk on the edge. I want to give the appearance
we sold our souls for things.
Well, I think that's
comfort.
I think that's why there's not a revolution right now, because they're like, well, man, I don't want to risk.
And I don't think we need a revolution. Actually, a revolution is a one complete term in a circle. You start at one point, you turn around, you end up back in the same point. So I'm a little wary of revolution. I like the word evolution, evolve, which has the word love in it. We need to evolve as people, and as we evolve and then connect back to who we really are, you identify your enemy, and your enemy immediately goes away because he knows that he's been playing with God. And we have to realize ourselves as God and be God. Like, I just talk it, I just believe in it. We have to be it, and the devil goes away.
What were you getting ready to say? Hold it. What were you getting ready to say, Tarzan?
First of all, amazing.
Respect.
You know, for me to be a young man, to finally actually hear that. No disrespect to any of you, but to hear it from an older man. I've been on the corner a lot. I've seen people. I've had family. They're older. They don't say it like that. They don't say it like that. That's the way I say it to my cousins. And what I want to speak about is that same simple fact. I'm in a family that has fought for perseverance through a Latin, Hispanic background, that have been taught that without what they need financially, they're nothing. And I've grown up in that. And it took me every part of my DNA to break away from my own family, to wear whatever I wanted to wear, to dread my hair, even though I'm Latin. I don't have to be black, I don't have to be Jamaican, but just knowing that I want to do it because I want to do it. And I want to express my creativity artistically, as I did tattoos, piercings, as I did everything else, and MMA. And I could never understood the fact that every time I walked down the block, the young generation, my age group, didn't understand. And they look just like my parents.
Well, I think that there's a piece that they don't want to understand because we're in this culture. I know for me, I was told, Saida, you learn to curtsy, you go to school, you do the right thing, you don't use the company phone, and you will be okay. And when I first started wearing my hair natural, my hair is very curly, naturally. And I first started wearing it curly, you know, I'm in my early 20s, starting to just kind of come into my own. I went to visit my grandmother. God bless her. She is 92 years old, so let's put that in perspective. She's 92, but the first thing she said to me was, why do you have your nappy hair looking like that? But do you see what I'm saying? And at that point, I was deflated. I'm a young woman coming into my own. Like, I can't help that I have big hair. But because my grandmother, and she's very fair-skinned, because she lived through that, to her, I'm shooting down every possible job opportunity. But do you know how, and I've had to go back and say to her, I mean, I'm a grown-up now. You know, now I can kind of talk back a little bit. But I was like, that wasn't very, but she didn't even know. She was getting me into the system.
She told you that because she loves you.
Exactly. And I was, and I felt so horrible. And you know what I did? I mean, I'm in a room full of guys, but what do? We go out and start straightening and pressing and this and that. But that's not who I was. So I think when we're looking at your difficulty in your own environment, being able to express who you are, that's across the board.
Exactly.
That's historically what happens to us. And I remember trying to let my children, my two sons, my younger son would wear his sneakers to the bone. I mean, he just liked to wear. And my girlfriend's, girl, you know you shouldn't be letting him outside like that. But that's just how he wanted to wear his sneakers. He just was. Now my other son, he got to be crisp from head to toe. And I felt some kind of way that if I condition him that you can't wear, like what else am I stifling in his spirit? If he wants to wear his sneakers down to the bone, I know we can afford to get it, but that's just what he wanted to do. And I felt some kind of way by telling him he couldn't do that. I want to get, you had something to say, Lorenzo had something to say, and then I want to get into a couple of points about the case of Trayvon Martin. 2 points specifically was the fact that they told him, do not follow him, number one. That was number one. And the second, the whole claim of stand your ground in self-defense. So before we get into that, you had something to say earlier.
It was just something that he said about evolving. I really like that because it involves changing. When something faces extinction, you either decide that you're going to be defeated and become extinct, or you're going to change your mind and do something else. And at that point, when you change your mind and decide to do something else, you've evolved. A singular cell has that ability. When they face extinction, they can either die out or they change their cellular structure in order to thrive and adapt to their environment. And that's what we all have to do. However, it still has not been that long since We were slaves and had to listen to what people told us what to do. I mean, we didn't live through it, but when you look at time-wise, it still hasn't been that long. But I do look at it on a positive note. Like even us sitting here as black men and having this discussion, talking about this, we're evolving.
Right.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about the verdict from Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman being found not guilty. We'll be right back right after these messages.